How do you kind of react or respond when you're out in public and people recognize and want those pictures?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough balance because we're in a position that I think most teenagers and most people for the most part want to be, famous and want to have notoriety and want to live the lifestyle of going viral. And so on one side, I try to instill in the girls like, look, there's been people that have been more famous than both of you that have come and gone. And I think one of the worst things people that I've heard that when they have notoriety is the worst thing is when people aren't asking for them anymore. So again, back to the original thing, I'm like, look, you have to appreciate this, but we also have to protect ourselves and make sure. So we've taken security measures. So it's a balance, right?
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is Marc D'Amelio. Marc is the first class father of Charli and Dixie D'Amelio, who are absolutely just crushing it on TikTok. Between the two of them, they have over 175 million followers. It's an honor to have Marc on the podcast today. Get down there, smack the subscribe button, tap that like, and let's jump into it right now with Marc D'Amelio on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, first class father, Marc D'Amelio. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it, Alec.
All right, let's start here. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I have two daughters. One is 19, Dixie, and 17, Charli. I've been saying she's 16 for so long. She's 17 now.
Yeah, so. I got four myself, so I'm constantly. I just had my daughter just turned 7, so I'm kind of always going through the different changes myself with the ages. So, if you could, Marc, please just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
I am a father of two, husband to my wife Heidi. Been in the clothing business my entire career. In both have my own clothing brand and working. Bringing other clothing brands to retail, had a showroom in New York City. And about 18 months ago, that all kind of changed with what's going on. So lived right outside of New York City in Connecticut for the majority of my life and have now been out in Hollywood, California for just over a year.
Yeah, very cool, Marc. If you could, please take me back to the beginning of your fatherhood journey here then. So about how old were you when you became a dad the first time, and how did becoming a father kind of shift or change your perspective on life?
I became a father for the first time in my early 30s. And it's kind of funny. You go through life thinking about yourself for the most part. When you're from your teenage years to it's all about yourself, and then college, and then how the job you're going to get. And it's all me, I. And then you get married and you start to share your life with someone. And then you have a child and you're responsible for someone else's life. And that is the biggest switch, because you go from instantly being a little bit selfish to not being selfish at all, and totally living to provide and take care and love your kids. And I didn't even realize that happened. And actually, I didn't even really think about it so much until I kind of started thinking about the potential questions, and that kind of came to me. But I think you go from being selfish to selfless really quickly.
Yeah, very well said. And what would you consider, Marc, to be the top values that you hope to instill in the girls growing up?
I think I've said to them, life is short, and to make the most out of every opportunity, and you're not guaranteed anything in life, and appreciate the journey. That's the one thing I've learned. I think we all go through these times in our lives where whether it's college or your first job, and you look and you kind of take things so serious, or I do. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I find myself to take things so seriously. And when I go back and reflect on those times, I think of only so much of the good times, very little of the bad times. And I wish some of the things that I appreciated and took in those experiences a little bit more, and things. And I've always told them, I tell my wife, things seem to work out. And if you have a positive attitude, they will. So those are some of the things I've told my kids throughout their lives so far.
Yeah, good stuff. I think it was Denzel Washington who said people have like destination addiction, where you're so focused on the destination of where you're going that you don't take time to appreciate where you are in the present. So I definitely hear you on that one. And obviously, the girls have blown up on TikTok. TikTok became a a huge thing, a huge app. What was the genesis of the girls getting involved in this? What was your reaction to it at the onset of this when you were first doing it? Is this something you were like, were you guys knocking off with this stuff, or how did this all seem to come about?
We were always pretty, for parents, we were pretty social media savvy, not ourselves as much. We were on social media, so we knew what was going on. But then I also, before TikTok, we saw Vine kind of blow up, and you had all these people become famous on Vine, and then that just disappeared. So I kind of took it with a grain of salt, and I was like, oh, it's cool. And I knew what 10,000 people were, and I knew when Charli had 100,000 people. I'm like, well, that's as big of a college football stadium as you can get. So I knew what that was, but it was still surreal, and we still kind of sit back and go, wow, I can't believe that this happened. But we were always really supportive of it, and hands on from the beginning, with being there to support both Charli and Dixie.
Yeah, and you mentioned they're filling up a college stadium, and just the views that they get, they're doing like Super Bowl numbers with like all of the TikToks that they put up there. So it's incredible the amount of people that watch and tune in, which has got to be fulfilling as a father to see them having so much success. What about as far as discipline goes here, Marc? What type of disciplinarian are you as a dad? And is that different than the way that you grew up discipline style wise? And has it been different for you disciplining the girls before the TikTok and after?
Yeah, I think from a disciplinarian standpoint, I'm the one you call. It's almost like Heidi is had been the day-to-day disciplinarian. And when I say disciplinarian, just teaching right from wrong, and those types of things. And then I would come in for more of the heavy issues, or at least the talk of, hey, we're gonna get dad involved here. But for the most part, Heidi did a lot of the day to day, and I wouldn't even call it discipline. I would call it just keeping everybody on the right direction, in the right direction, going forward properly. I would say now there's two issues, right? One is I'm dealing with a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old. So my 19-year-old is out of the house, so she's an adult, and Charli is on her way to being an adult in less than a year, officially. They do still care about what we think as parents, and I think they still look at us and are concerned that how we feel about how they're handling themselves. So I think it's more. I think when you lay the groundwork of bringing your kids up to the best of your ability and hopefully doing it right, those thoughts, ideas, stay in their mind. So we don't really have a lot of things. We're more telling them to kind of loosen up a little bit, and to not let the spotlight and the fame change them and make them into this person that they have to. Both kids think about everything they do every day, and I think Heidi and I are more like, dude, go out, have fun, enjoy yourself. They're not crazy kids. They don't do anything that they've never really done anything. I say it all the time that I'm sure there's been disappointments that if I thought about, I could, but nothing that I've ever been nothing that's ever made me feel like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. So.
Yeah, very, very cool, Marc. And my girl is my only girl. She's my baby. We had three boys, then got the girl on the fourth try. So I am still struggling with the discipline portion of it with my daughter. I tend to discipline differently with my boys than I do with my daughter. And I'll tell you this, like I am, I'm not looking forward to the time when she starts to hit this dating scene and she's in this teenage years and stuff like that. So you're right there. How did you kind of handle it when the girls became old enough to start dating? And what kind of advice did you give them, when that all began?
I don't want to say I didn't take the outlook of, I'm a realist, right? I knew that there were going to be boys around, and I looked for things in the boys that I think I showed to girls' parents and when as much as I could when I was younger. So if I know it's inevitable that they're going to date, they're going to hopefully get married someday, and I just look for the basic things. Are they good people? Are they respectful? And you know, and those are the things. So I knew early on, like, it's part of it. I was a teenage boy. I dated girls, and it's part of what happens. And I knew what I was getting into. So I think I was less. I think I was pretty liberal about it. I wasn't too uptight about it. And as long as the guys came in, and I've been very lucky for both daughters, at anyone that they've brought home, there's no one that's come through our front door that I've been like, I don't want that person here. They're all the young men that they've brought to the house look you in the eye, shake your hand. So we've been real lucky with that.
Yeah, listen, like I said, I'm bracing myself for impact. I've had a lot of Navy SEALs on here, a lot of UFC fighters. So listening to that, I was like, man, it must be nice to be that person just for that aspect of it. That little portion of it right there helps out a little bit, you know. But like I said, kind of callous in my mind for what's to come with that. Tell me about your podcast here, Marc. You and Heidi got a podcast, the other D'Amelios. What was the basis of you guys beginning that podcast, and what's been the feedback from the fans and from your girls?
So I think let's start with the girls. I don't know that they've heard an episode yet. So but that's par for the course with teenagers. What we set out to do, Alec, is early on we kind of came together as a family and said, hey, we're starting to get in a situation, a point of no return, where people are knowing our family and they have these preconceived notions about us. And I think the only way to combat that, instead of going on and typing after someone makes a comment to you, is have people to get to know us. And one of the things we're doing is a show on Hulu. And the other thing Heidi and I did, just to give the people out there that may care our perspective on life and parenting teenagers and all the things that happen, kind of behind the scenes of what happens to Dixie and Charlie, but from just a parent perspective, not a tell-all, or hey guys, guess what Dixie did, or guess what Charlie did. Just kind of giving our perspective. And the one thing that's super cool about it for us is, as you go through life and you meet your significant other and you date, and then you get married, you lose that time where you just sit there and communicate, because we're all have super busy schedules, and it's kind of like a locked in date for my wife and I for a half hour to an hour, where we actually just kind of regroup. And it's been really cool. And for us, because it's almost that time that we used to do when we first started dating, or when we first got married, where we go out to dinner and just, talk to each other and lock eyes for an hour or 2 hours. We do that in the podcast. So it's kind of a bummer that it took a podcast for us to do that. But now we definitely carve out time to have those times of communication where it's just she and I talking to each other. So it's cool.
Yeah, I never thought to look at it that way. That's a great point that you bring up there. I still do that with my wife. We try to make sure we have date nights and stuff like that. Obviously, it gets busy and more difficult to do as the time goes on. One thing I'm curious about, Marc, I would think as a father, as a protector, it's got to be difficult now that the girls are well known. Do you run into these situations where you'll be out and people come up to take pictures with them, and do they get a little too are you running into anything like that? And how do you kind of react or respond when you're out in public and people recognize and want those pictures?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough balance, because we're in a position that I think most teenagers and most people, for the most part, want to be, famous, and want to have notoriety, and want to live the lifestyle of going viral. And so on one side, I try to instill in the girls, like, look, there's been people that have been more famous than both of you that have come and gone. And I think one of the worst things, people that I've heard, that when they have notoriety is the worst thing, is when people aren't asking for them anymore. So again, back to the original thing, I'm like, look, you have to appreciate this, but we also have to protect ourselves and make sure. So we've taken security measures. So it's a balance, right? If you see a a kid who's, I'm always the one with my eyes like looking in the crowd and making sure I'm kind of surveying the situation, and I'll catch the other dad and his daughter pulling on his dad's her dad's sleeve going, that's Charli or that's Dixie. And I'll catch his eye. And I know, I kind of feel in my heart that that's a safe situation. I'll be, come on over. And I'll say, you want to meet Charli? And so those are the kind of things. But then there have been some pretty interesting interactions with either people knocking on our door back in Connecticut. You know, we had every day we had 2 or 3 people in Connecticut just roll up on our door, and most of them were fine and innocuous and everything was cool. And then even when Dixie and I were in Paris last week, we got out of the car and this kid got so excited she actually grabbed at Dixie, and it kind of startled Dixie. And then after the next day I came back and I just said, hey guys, she wants to meet with everybody, but you guys have to give her some space or she's going to get overwhelmed. And it was scary. So it does get scary. And we do have a full-time security team that we've had to hire and which now they're like part of our family. So we're in good hands that way.
Yeah, it's one of those things, I guess, and you mentioned it there. Like everybody wants to go viral, everyone's looking to do this, and it's one of those things I guess people don't really think about is what happens when you do, and it's situations like that that can be uncomfortable because there's a lot of nuts that are on this social media for sure. And so, what kind of advice would you have to the parent out there that does have the kids that are out there? Listen, I drive a lot of Uber on the weekends and stuff, and all these girls do on Friday nights is they're doing these TikToks in the back seat with these songs. Like everyone's trying to do this. So, what kind of advice do you have for the parent out there? Maybe what to watch for, how to help them for the kids that are trying to get on there, TikTok, Instagram, and become viral?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough balance because you don't want to be the parent that is being, for lack of a better term, creepy on these apps, but you do have to keep an eye on it. And that's kind of how Heidi and I first got involved is we're joking around and we're like, look, if these boys are going to be trying to contact Charli and doing TikToks, I kind of want to keep an eye on it. So I would say, without being invasive and without destroying the trust that you and the trust bond that you and your kids have, get involved and look at the stuff and make sure you know what they're doing. And there's a balance of doing it. I mean, there's so many different, I look at, Heidi and I were just talking about how many different businesses and how many different the people are on TikTok now. And it's easy for a parent to get on there and just kind of keep an eye on things and know what's happening without going viral and so I would say keep an eye on all of it. Twitter, Instagram, Triller, TikTok. I think they all need to be looked at. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be more to come too. It seems like they pop up, when you least expect it. So, well, obviously, all right, you got the show, the Hulu, the podcast. What kind of goals or plans do you have? What's coming up next for you here, Marc?
I mean, Alec, it's come at us so quickly and so fast, and I think we're doing a decent job at just handling it all. But ultimately, there was a time that we had a kind of just a family meeting when this thing started to bubble up, and I said, we just have to continue to have these family checkups where we say, hey, are we as happy now as we were when it was just a couple of months? And now we look back and we're like, hey, are we as happy now as we were before all this started? And we just, every so often, we just keep doing that. So I think the main thing we're trying to do is appreciate all the success and all this stuff that is incredible. We're incredibly blessed, incredibly lucky, but still maintain a great family dynamic, and most importantly, be happy. So all of the brand deals and the publicity and the PR is all awesome, but really ultimately, and I think this is something everybody has to do, is are you as happy as you can be, and look at that as your goal to be happy and figure out what happiness is for you, obviously the first thing. And then secondly is track on that goal to be happy and check in with everybody. So that's what we do.
Yeah, awesome stuff, Marc. I really love what you do and what your family's all about. I talk about on my show all the time. We got a fatherless crisis going on in our country. So many kids growing up without a father figure in their life. So we definitely need more family influencers out there to portray the family in a great light. So props to you and your family for what you're doing. Last thing I want to ask you here, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
I think I think again, back to the original thing we said is I think we're always like, oh, as dads, we're always thinking about the future and how am I going to, do I have enough money away for college? Is there food on the table? It's always down the road. And I think, what I have learned is to live in the moment and don't rely on going back and having to look at videos of you and you bringing up your kids. Like, live in the moment and make the sacrifices on, have other things become the sacrifice. Like, I wish I spent although I love what I do for a living, I wish I spent less time worrying about making money and more time hanging out with my kids, doing nothing. And I did a lot of that. It wasn't like I was one of those dads that wasn't around. So I think my advice is to appreciate this thing, because they grow up, everybody says it, they grow up super fast and you turn around. I was just looking at a video of both Dixie and Charli when they were toddlers, and I'm like, wow, how did that happen? So just live in the moment and appreciate the now.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been a lot of fun for me. I got to say, Marc D'Amelio, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Alec, thank you so much. I appreciate it, man.